Alright, today we're going to be putting on the Holley high ram. Haven't seen any videos on it, so thought we'd make a video just to help y'all out. Alright, over here we have our high ram. This is the bottom of it. It's getting polished over there by my buddy. And the box you'll see comes with a big old rubber seal. You're going to run that along and push it into the groove. And the remainder of the seal will be cut and used for the O-ring on the throttle body, which will be on the top lid. Over here we have the Juggernot Performance fuel line kit for this, because especially on a Gen 3 direct injection, you're going to have to splice over for the direct injection pump on the billet fuel rails. I opted to go with the true high ram, so it does require a different throttle body. Make sure you get that or are aware of how much they cost before you order one of these, because they cost a pretty penny. For simplicity, I went with breathers for my valve covers because I don't want to make that many vacuum lines. There's plenty of vacuum ports on this manifold, but for simplicity, $60 is a nice way to go. But we'll start installing it now.
Alright, so we're going to start pulling off the cold air. In my case, it's PMAS, and just getting all your vacuums off. Some of these clips can be challenging, but if you don't plan on putting this manifold back, then don't worry too much about cracking one. Sometimes they just don't want to come off. After you get your vacuum connections off, we're going to do the fuel line. On the fuel line on the driver's side, you're going to lift up on the green clip and it should pop out. Make sure you have a towel handy because it'll spill a little bit of gas. After that, let's make sure injectors are unplugged. Pull that fuel line out, it's 4 bolts on the top, and you can start pulling the bolts out for the manifold. Alright, so once you got your fuel rail off, there's going to be a clip on each injector. You're just going to pull those off, and then the injector should pop right out. Some elbow grease. Don't be like me, just disconnect your fuel line first. You'll need a fuel line disconnect tool for the direct injection pump on the passenger side, but they're about $10 at any auto store. Disregard if you don't have a Gen 3, Gen 1s and 2s. Don't have direct injection, so you can skip that. But you're going to pull those out. Make sure you clock the connection or the harness connection for each fuel injector the way it's clocked on the stock fuel rail when you transfer them over, just so you can plug them in easier. There is a correct way to line them up, but you will have some wiggle room either way. And once we get the fuel rails out and the injectors out, there will be 8 bolts left on your manifold to take it off. Once we get those out, just make sure your throttle body's unplugged, and then there will be 3 at the back for your IMRC. If you're Gen 1, you don't have to worry about that. Manifold should come off. Make sure you tape off those intake ports. You don't want anything getting in there. Next up, there's this water block right here that goes to your coolant overflow. You're going to have to bend this or buy the Holley 45-degree one, which involves drilling and tapping, or you won't clear the manifold. It's 2 bolts. You're going to get coolant everywhere, so I'd recommend draining it like I did not. But make sure you're aware of this before you order that. I was not. Why I'm filming this is one of those reasons, just to let y'all know. I ended up just taking it off, heating it up with the torch, and bending it to the desired angle till it cleared, which worked fine, but at your own risk. Next up, there's some studs in the kit, and those do go in your heads, so you're going to make sure those are nice and in there. I used the nuts, and I would put 2 on them and just make sure they're cinched down. Obviously, you got aluminum heads, so don't go crazy on this. You'll strip it out. Then I'd recommend going over your intake ports with some valve cleaner or something similar just to clean them out. My car has almost 90,000 miles on it, so I just went through, cleaned them up. Takes 5 minutes, you might as well. And then you're almost ready to put your high rim on. Make sure when you put your lid on, you don't forget that seal as I showed you on the beginning. You'll fish that and it'll pop into place. Just make sure there's no gaps when you're torquing it down, and you should be good to go. Also, don't forget your O-ring where your throttle body goes. Very important. You don't want a vacuum leak. It's not fun to take this thing in and out. It's a lot heavier than your plastic manifolds. And then you're going to check everything. Make sure there's not pinched wires. You don't want to pinch any of your injector, or there's an ignition pigtail up there too. Just make sure you're free and clear, got your tape off, and make sure you put the rubber seals on each of your inlet ports on the bottom of the manifold as well. And you should be good to go to start putting your nuts on the top. Alright, and I'll let y'all watch us putting the fuel rails on. They're a bit fun when you don't know how it connects, because none of these kits come with instructions. The Holley does, but not for the fuel rails. So I went with the Juggernot Performance fuel line kit. It comes with a single piece of AN line. You are going to have to cut that. One side, the driver's side, we use for the fuel in. We use that little L bracket. I'll show you all in depth in a minute just how the fuel fittings connect, but make sure everything is tight before you put it in because you don't want to be sitting there with an AN wrench trying to get them all tight after you already caused a fuel leak. Also, there's not a lot of space to work with for your cold air. It took me quite a few tries and figuring out how to get this all in one piece. And also, don't forget, you're going to need a bracket or some sort of different coolant reservoir, if not for the bracket. PMAS included a bracket with my old one, so I just used that and moved it over to the left side, which I'll show you in depth later. Alright, now I can get in here and show you all a little better how everything hooks up fuel rail wise. So that little L fitting, as I said, you're gonna put on the pass or the driver front. Make sure everything's tight. Get a clean cut on your AN fittings. We just used a angle grinder and some electrical tape. That's gonna be your fuel pressure sensor. It goes on the driver's side. Also make sure that's tight. You might think it's tight. It's probably not. Mine leaked. And then on the back, you're gonna route around to the passenger side with AN line to the other rail. Um, and on the other side, you're going to put a block off on the front right there. And you're going to put the longer barb from the kit to hook up, and it should snap right onto your factory direct injection pump hose. There's the bracket I'm talking about. Find something that works for you. And then I'm not going to be using my stock hood. I tried cutting it right there as I'm pointing, but with the polished manifold, it's just not going to clear without scratching it up. So with some drop mounts plus cutting, I'm sure you can make it work, but do what works for you. Alright, and then on the vacuum side of things, there's 4 ports on this manifold, 2 small ones on the bottom and 2 on the side. Right there where the arrow is where I decided to put my brake booster. They don't supply fittings, they supply block offs, but you'll need a fitting for your vacuum ports. I just used some rubber hose to extend the brake booster line and put a hose clamp on it. And then for your PCV, which is right here, a lot of the Cobra Jet guys are just kind of leaving it dangling. Make sure you tell your tuner if you do this. Turn off the evap code. Same with your IMRC. Make sure they're turning that off. If you have a car that had IMRC on it that was not deleted in the past, just so they're aware. And I don't like having the PCV hose like that for the evap, so I'm probably going to put it on the other side. I just didn't have enough fittings at the time, but that's how it's going to sit for a few days. Um, I just want to get this out there, help some people out. There's nothing on these manifolds really that I can see install wise. The car made 480 in its old setup, just long tubes, 85 with the PMAS. It's a stick car. If we get enough requests, I might dynamite on this just so y'all can see. I really don't think it picked up more than 10 horsepower to be completely honest, but the power curve definitely did change. It feels a lot more low in torque and it kind of falls off towards the top, but it's a fun manifold. I'm going boost and I cracked my plastic one in the past, so this one really spoke to me being cast and a lot stronger, and plus it's pretty. But hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if y'all have any questions.